along to our next speaker, and interviewing Karl Schmid is going to be Jeff Taylor. But first, let me do a quick introduction on Karl. He's the entertainment reporter for ABC7 Los Angeles, and he's going to speak today on HIV and the media. He came out as HIV positive in 2018, and he now uses his multimedia platform Plus Life to educate and combat HIV stigma. At ABC7, Karl's been a regular contributor since 2013. He first joined the team as a correspondent and producer on the then weekly and syndicated On the Red Carpet. And he's a passionate activist in the fight against HIV stigma. He launched Plus Life Media in 2019 online to help foster a new conversation around what it means for people living with HIV and to tackle the stigma still associated with the virus. So Plus Life is also a part of Localish TV. That's a newly launched TV network, again, Localish TV. And Karl says HIV is not killing people, but stigma is, and this needs to change. So we're going to hear more about that today. And I also wanted to hold up the shirts that DAP produced for us today, the U=U shirt. And Karl will make sure and get one of those shirts over to you. And now, without further ado, Jeff Taylor, if you'd like to do the honors and bring on Karl Schmid.
Thanks, Brad, and welcome, Karl. Thank you so much for joining us today from LA.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm feeling very zen after that. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Let me see if I'm. There we go. That might sound on. All right. So Karl is a journalist, of course. So he, being the consummate journalist, he wanted to do this as an interview. So I'll be asking him some questions, and he'll be telling a story. If you have any questions, please feel free to post those in the chat. And if there's time at the end, we'll have time to address those. So again, welcome, Karl. And do you want to start out by maybe telling us what prompted you to share your story publicly?
Well, thanks, Jeff, and thanks everyone for letting me invade your heads after such a lovely, comfortable meditation there. I'm here to rattle it all up, I suppose, but nice to see all your faces. Yeah, look, I've been living with HIV for 13 years now, so in the grand scheme of things, still probably a bit of a baby in the world of living with my friend. But I had spent my entire life thus far has really been in front of the camera or working in television in some capacity. Since I was 7 years old, I've been around it, and it's all I know. It's what I love. It's what I'm extremely passionate about is telling stories and meeting people and sharing their stories. So to carry a secret like HIV as I did, I kept it professionally to myself for 10 years. Because much like I'm sure many people can relate to, I was told, don't talk about it. This is something you should be ashamed of. It'll ruin your career. And here we are 40 years after that first report for the CDC, and we're still saying that HIV will ruin your career or will destroy your life. And that's how most people see it. So I kept quiet about it for a long time. And then rather accidentally, 3 and a bit years ago, I'm not going to lie, I'd had a couple of martinis and someone took a photo of me wearing a t-shirt. And I thought, oh, that's quite a nice picture. I like how I look in that. So I posted it online and just sort of told my story. And there wasn't much thought behind it, but out came the words. And within 24 hours, it had gone viral, much to my shock. And my immediate thought was, oh my God, they're going to fire me. ABC is going to fire me. I've just lost my job. And it was that same kind of sick feeling that I had in my gut the day I was diagnosed with HIV, that, oh shit, I've fucked up. I've screwed up somehow, pardon my language. And I think how awful that anyone should ever feel like that for something like this. Fortunately, ABC didn't fire me, not yet anyway. I'm still here. And what it did was it ignited a fire in me that I guess had been slowly sort of starting to burn. But in the past 3 years, as you mentioned in the intro, I launched Plus Life Media, which is a digital platform and now a television show that's all about breaking down stigma and sort of how you pick yourself up when you're on the floor and you think there's no point getting back up again. And I'm lucky, you know, I still have a job, I still have a presence sometimes on television, and I've been given a platform and an opportunity to speak about HIV, and that's what we need when we talk about sort of HIV/AIDS in the media. You know, I think we're finally slowly starting to get that we don't need to constantly paint this as the sad, horrible death sentence it was. For so long, when we've seen it portrayed in the media, we're still harking back to 1985. And while it's very important that we don't ever forget what this illness has done to people, and all those people who have fought so hard, I think it's also time we turn the page on how we tell the story of HIV and how we represent HIV. We talk about diversity and inclusion constantly. You hear it a lot around the awards ceremonies when it's the Oscars, diversity and inclusion, and, you know, proper representation on screen. Well, that needs to extend not just to people living with HIV, but anybody who might have something that is often stigmatized or looked down upon. The only way we get past any of that stuff is to normalize it. You know, for so long, Jeff, people didn't say cancer. Remember, we used to say the C word. Oh, they've got the C word. Now the C word means something else, far more aggressive. But people wouldn't say cancer. People didn't talk about divorce. Oh, we can't mention that they're separated. Oh God, what would people think? But now everyone's divorced. So I hope we can get to a place that we can say HIV positive and not sort of then look over our shoulder or go, God, who heard me? What's happening? And part of what I want to do and what I try to do is just show that this is HIV. This is one of the faces of HIV. This is what it looks like. I'm still here for now. That was a very long answer, Jeff. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Is anyone still awake?
I see faces out there. I think people are with us. So you're keeping them entertained. No, this is terrific.
I'm trying.
So, you know, you talk about, you know, what the reaction was and, you know, what we need to be seeing and how people perceive HIV. What do you think as a journalist that your industry could and should be doing to kind of move that needle in the right direction?
Well, you know, I think I sort of touched on it a bit there. It's time we, as I said, turn the page on how we show whether it's HIV, whether it's other stigmatized, you know, illnesses out there or disabilities or things that we perceive as different. It's time we change how we tell those stories. And I think we're starting to see that. You know, I look at the wonderful work that the television show Pose has done in the 3 seasons it was on the air. And there's no surprise that they've got all these Emmy nominations that we'll hear about, you know, who takes home what awards tomorrow night at the Emmys. And they already picked some up at the Creative Arts. But I think what that show did brilliantly was, yes, it was at the height of the, you know, the AIDS hell, but it turned HIV into a character rather than a bad story plot. It humanized HIV, and those characters on Pose and what Stephen Canals did on that show and what the wonderful cast did, and Billy and all those folks, is they humanized this thing that so often we just haven't seen. We've seen the face of AIDS and the face of death, but we haven't seen beyond that. And by telling these kind of stories and other shows that have been on the air where characters just happen to be living with HIV. Just now, how, you know, it's sort of like, oh, the character just happens to be gay, or the character just happens to be trans. It's not about how they discovered that they were trans and the transition. It's not a coming out story of having to spend an hour and a half explaining why we're gay, or an hour and a half or 2 hours of explaining how they got HIV. We have to stop really sort of that first and foremost question that comes to so many people's minds is when you tell someone you're HIV, they go, how'd you get it? I mean, you don't ask people how they, you know, got diabetes. Oh, I ate too much sugar or whatever, you know, like, so it's taking away that part of the sort of backstory, I guess, and just going, yeah, he's living with HIV and that he's married to a man, or they're a heterosexual, cisgendered straight couple that have a kid, but mom happens to be HIV positive. Because the reality is, that's what's out there in our neighborhoods. That's the truth of this these days. And that wonderful T-shirt, "You equals you," my favorite of all time expression, the cheapest public service safety health service announcement, "You equals you." Undetectable equals untransmittable. But do you know how many people still don't know about "You equals you"? It's remarkable. I didn't know about it until 3 years ago. Up until 3 years ago, I thought that was it. It was done. I called it handcuffs. When I was diagnosed, the handcuffs went on, and that was it. That was my lot. And I was going to either sort of be with someone who was HIV positive, or really, I just kind of got it in my head that I used to say, I thought I was being funny. I used to say, "Oh, I'm damaged goods. You don't want this." What I didn't realize is that every time I thought I was being funny and saying that, I was actually storing it in the back of my head and believing it. And 10 years of saying, "Oh, I'm damaged goods." "Oh, you don't want me up." The damage of the level of internalized stigma that to this day, thank God, with therapy and psychiatrists and good friends and family, I'm still working through. I mean, I, as a 27-year-old, built a fortress around myself and went, "That's it," it's if we can take away the horrors and show the reality and talk to people in a normal human way, I think we start to normalize things. And yes, I agree, Daniel, meditation can help with that kind of stuff. You did a great session there. I've become a big believer in transcendental meditation personally. It's something that actually has significantly helped me over the past couple of years. But yeah, we need to, and that's, you know what, Jeff, that's why we created Plus Life. Really, Plus Life is a platform where it's anybody and everybody. So whether you're living with HIV or not, we talk to, we have my parents on at one point, and I realized I'd never spoken to my parents about the day I disclosed my status. I've never talked to them about how they felt and how they dealt with it. And it was a really interesting conversation online, and we got a lot of feedback from a lot of parents who said, that was so good to hear that, because you don't think about that. So what we do at Plus Life is we really try and have conversations with everyday people from all walks of life. I don't care what color you are, who you pray to, what you look at when you look downstairs. It doesn't matter. We're all part of this village, and we all talk to each other, and we take away kind of the medical and science jargon. We follow the science, but we don't talk about all these confusing big words that I can't even spell, let alone pronounce. We just talk and communicate and share our stories. And that seems to resonate and connect with people. And I think that's how we change this narrative.
Oops, unmute. You spoke about your own journey. There are lots of other people now who have the same courage you did to come out as HIV positive, in the media and sports. And, as people with a platform, you've obviously done amazing things with Plus Life Media and just being out and open. What responsibility do you think other people living with HIV have to be out and open and to talk about the cause? Some people just don't want it to be talked about. They don't want it to be part of who they are, but yet it is. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think everyone's journey and story is obviously different, right? I mean, and we all find and use our voices in different ways. For me personally, I had, even before I spoke publicly, I'd always had it in the back of my head that one day I'd like to be able to do something to help people and to communicate. I didn't quite know how. And of course, as I said, there was a huge fear that I would lose everything. That a very, very dear friend of mine who works in television in the UK said, "Oh, darling, don't do it. You don't want to become known as the person with AIDS on television." Now, he's a really good friend, and he knows he should probably know better in the way he framed it. And he wasn't coming from a bad place. But that just goes to show the level of ignorance out there. I'm not the guy with AIDS on television. I'm the person who's living with HIV quite happily. And I personally now see it as a responsibility, and one that is not a burden in any way, shape, or form. I love it. When I get to sit and do things like this and I get to talk about HIV, it makes all the shitty parts of my day and my job disappear. I'm really passionate about it. You know, I could be doing stuff for ABC and it all looks glamorous, and I'm at the Oscars and I'm talking to this person and I've just interviewed Harrison Ford and I've done this, and I'm sort of in a grumpy mood. And then, you know, they say to me, oh, come on, Karl, you have to do a Plus Life interview now. And I'm like, oh, it's 6 o'clock. I've done enough. I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't care. I don't want to do it. And the minute we start doing it, everything goes away. And I come out of it on top of the world because I've spoken to somebody and shared their story. And it's suddenly just so much more meaningful. Not that entertainment and Hollywood news isn't, I don't think it's that meaningful, but you know, like, it's entertainment and that's important. And I don't want to take away from that, but there's something to be said for, you know, connecting with people on a real personal level. So when I look at other celebrities out there, you know, it's funny, Billy Porter, I'll name drop a little bit and be a bit Hollywood here. Billy and I have known each other for quite a long time, and he's obviously known about my status. I suspected about Billy, but you know, we're respectful. We let people come at their own speed. And he actually had come to me a little before he announced this year, and he goes, all right, we're not recording anything, are we? Turn all the recording stuff off. I need to talk to you. And I went, mm-hmm. And he goes, you know what I'm going to say? And I said, oh, maybe. And people like Billy now, I see Billy always had a fire in him. He grew up in the church. The church means a lot. I call him the preacher because whenever he talks, it's like he's giving a sermon, the passion in him. And he's doing a great job, not just as a representative for someone living with HIV, but as a proud, openly gay Black man who is saying, hey, I for years have played the game of the system and suppressed who I was inside and no more. And I see his anger and has turned into passion. And I saw him last night, and it's just great. And to talk to him and say, I said, how do you feel now it's out there? And he said, you're right. It was, you know, it's like that coming out of the closet moment when we're all like in the closet and then we come out and you go, wow, the weight is off my shoulders. It's the same kind of thing with HIV. So I think that those of us who are comfortable in who we are and in talking about it, I'd like to think we would all take it on like I have, like a responsibility, because we're showing everyone that you don't have to be standing in the dark shadows alone. And the fact that in 2000 and whatever year it was, 2021, going into 2022, more than 50% of this country still believe the messaging that we were given in 1985. How is that possible? How can we, and you know, in this wonderful conference of aging with HIV, and we're talking about it, how is it that we are still treating people like dog shit on the sole of your shoe, pardon my very graphic expression, just because of HIV? When it comes to social, not just medical, but social, we have a huge social problem with this thing. So Billy and myself and others who feel comfortable in coming out, I mean, look, you can probably count on two hands how many openly HIV positive people you know in the media sports world, right? You can't tell me there's only 10 of us out there. Yeah, I'm just seeing Tez Anderson's note there about since 1987. Exactly. And that's the other thing, is HIV positive people, we're constantly expected to come out, right? Oh, we always have to explain it. I got into this conversation last night. I'm like, why do I have to be the one that tells everybody oh, by the way, I'm HIV positive? Why should I have to do it? Take damn responsibility for your own health in your own self, and don't put the pin on me. Don't get me started on criminalization. That's a whole different 40 minutes of me ranting and raving. But You know, like enough already, stop it. And so if people like Billy and myself, and to some, you know, people like Jonathan Van Ness and other people who are out there are showing people that, so I've got these 3 letters and a plus sign attached to my medical record. Okay, great. You know, we've all got something, haven't we? But this is no different to, you know, any of the other things you pop a pill for and manage.
Thank you for that. I think it speaks really eloquently to the power of people's stories and coming out and being your authentic self and what that means to others. You know, we do it for ourselves, but we have to remember that we're doing it for others as well.
Well, and Jeff, you know what? I think it's really interesting that we memorialize and hold up in great honor and love and respect when someone has died of AIDS-related illness. Oh, you know, he was such an amazing person, and tragedy of the HIV, and he died of AIDS and all this sort of stuff. So once we've moved on, we somehow become heroes. But while we're alive, we're treated like pariahs. Explain that one to me. How does that work? When you're dead, oh, they were such a great person. It's such a tragedy. But while I was alive and living with HIV, you're all scared to come near me or sleep with me or hug me or be intimate with me, or, you know, because there was still, I don't know. And so we have a job in the media to get rid of that, ooh, I don't know, in the back of people's heads. And like I say often, you know, Coca-Cola taught the world to sing, and McDonald's says, I'm loving it. And, you know, we know the slogans for Revlon and every other brand in the world. So why can't we sort of, you know, you may not drink Coca-Cola and you may not eat McDonald's, but you know what it is and you know what it stands for. Mm-hmm. We really need a public health service campaign for HIV like that takes away the lab coats and the stethoscopes and the everything else, and just talks to people like normal people in a way that we can all understand and all appreciate. And that's where I think U equals U does that, but it's not for some reason, especially in this country, the U equals U message is just not getting through, especially in the South and in Black, brown, and trans communities. So, you know, that's also part of what we have to try and figure out in the media.
Yeah, it's a total travesty the way U equals U is not getting out there, that message. I mean, I have friends who are, you know, educated, well-connected gay men who really didn't know about it. So, and you're right, the broader community doesn't know at all. So, you know, they're still curious.
Well, we still have doctors in this country who say, oh, yes, well, U equals U. Well, yes, but it's not my opinion. And pardon, I'm going to swear again, but fuck your opinion. I don't want your opinion. I want the science and the facts. And U equals U is a game changer for every single person, not just living with HIV, but those in prevention. I mean, it's so simple, because if people aren't scared of HIV, they're not scared to go and get tested for HIV, you know? So that's part of my mission and what I do. And whenever I get my face on camera at ABC, they kind of roll their eyes at me now because they go, here he goes again. But I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to shut up about it, because it's saving lives. As you said in the intro at the top there, HIV doesn't have to kill you, but stigma absolutely will and is killing people.
You know, we have a question from Martina in the room, who is asking, how should long-term survivors pitch their stories to you as a journalist?
You should just email me or follow us on Plus Life Media, at Plus Life Media, and I can put that in the chat too. I think somebody might have put it in there earlier. But you can just send us slide into our DMs, as the kids say these days, and I will put the website up there too, and send me stuff, because we have done and if you check out the website pluslifemedia.com, it's up there. Telling everyone's story is really important, and we've done quite a few stories on aging and HIV, but there's so many more that deserve to be told and that I want to tell. So follow us online and literally slide into our DMs. We're not a huge organization, so we see them, I see them, and let's be part of that conversation. It's important. everyone in this room has stories, and what we think may be sort of insignificant might be hugely significant, even for one of the people in the box next to you in this chat, who may feel a certain way, and they go, oh, wow, I didn't, oh, you had the same experience. Like, and that's, once we start talking, that's what I say, like, let's have a conversation. The more you say HIV out loud, doesn't matter how old you are, the less scary it becomes.
Mhm.
Bruce Richmond is a U equals U hero. Yes, and I'm just looking at some comments in the chat now. I know Bruce very well, and Bruce is the one that told me about U equals U. He saw my story go public, and he reached out to me.
Well, coming up later in the day, we're going to be capping off this event with an interview with Andrew Bell,
who we've had on Plus Life. He's fantastic. And I know, look, you're very good. You called him Andrew Bell, because we're not supposed to call him Andy Bell anymore.
Oh, good. I wasn't sure. So I've done the right thing.
Yeah.
First time on camera. Good to know. Well, any parting words or words of wisdom you'd like to share with us? You know, and you know, we talk about living through the epidemic, and you know, so many of us are survived, and right now we're surviving another pandemic happening kind of in tandem with the one we've been living with for the last 40 years. Any thoughts on that and how that's permeated the public mind and consciousness about how we deal with pandemic disease and
well,
come up?
I think, first of all, thank you, Jeff, and thank you everyone for listening to me ramble on for the last 35 minutes or so. I appreciate it. Not too many people turned off and went away, so that's a start. So thank you all, and thank you for spending your weekend doing this and communicating with each other and listening and being a part of it, because it's, as I just said, conversation is key. As far as sort of wrapping it out and comparing it, you know, to where we are now, it is something that I've been really interested in, and especially speaking to older people with HIV who really lived through the hell of the 80s and 90s. I mean, I was just a kid, and now the similarities and the PTSD of having to go through this again, especially when we were all locked up in our houses. At least now there's a little bit more room for us to move, thankfully, in this country. It's like we didn't handle the pandemic well, but we're sort of getting on top of the vaccine, whereas other countries handled it well, but haven't gotten on top of the vaccine, and now they're going through, like my homeland of Australia. But, you know, I just want to, I think that we all just need to take a moment and realize there's a reason we're all still here, when I think many of the people in this room were probably told they never would be. And there's something to be said for that in itself. But communicate and reach out to all the nice faces I see in all these boxes in front of me. You know, we're not alone as much as we think we are, and sometimes we think it's easier to be alone. I know I've certainly felt that way, but you know, at the end of the day, you got to have a laugh with someone, and you can't just laugh by yourself all the time, because otherwise you're a bit strange. Not that there's anything wrong with being strange. So, but anyway, I don't think that was a very good answer, but I love the U equals U t-shirt. It looks fantastic, and I can't wait. Brad, I will put my address in, and I can't wait to get it, and I will model it proudly. But thank you.
We'll send that off to you.
Thanks for having me all,
Karl,
and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Karl. We enjoyed the photo on your Plus Life page of you doing a little smooch with Elizabeth Taylor.
That was last night. Yes, that's as close as I was allowed to get. Yes.
Was that auctioned off? Was that piece auctioned off?
No, I don't think it was, but no, that was just part of the private collection that was there. But it was, you know, the Elizabeth Taylor Ball to End AIDS. And it was a good event last night. I mean, these events are fun and glamorous, of course. You do sometimes go, where does it all go and how does it all work, though? And, you know, but it was an opportunity for Billy Porter to be honored and speak. So there are a lot of people. Sure. We have a lot of great allies out there. I know we can feel isolated and kind of go, well, that's Hollywood for you. Look at them all patting themselves on the back and, you know, drinking champagne. But we do have, and it is humbling when you go to things like that as a person living with HIV, or an AIDS walk, for example, that we've got coming up. We've got an AIDS walk special coming up tomorrow on ABC here in Los Angeles. And when you get to see the outpouring of support that our allies give us, that also is really significant and special. So.
Wonderful. By the way, Karl, we do get to see you here on our cable system.
Oh, you
We
do?
have a
Good.
chance. Yeah, we do get ABC, especially during the news times, the local news times. So they cover the other programming, but with infomercials. But otherwise, we get to see you. So that's fantastic.
Well,
and thank you so much for sharing your day with us.
Of course, and I'm sorry that we weren't doing this in person this year, but some people don't want to get vaccinated and wear masks. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Again, thank you, Karl Schmid.
Thanks,
ABC
everyone.
7, Los Angeles. Let us move forward.